Oh. That's number 5 on our agenda. Okay. Oh my God. Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're live.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's 2:30, Tuesday, November 1st. I call the meeting of the Wood Creek Ordinance Review Committee to order. Roll call.
Chairperson Emma Davenport,
Here.
Vice Chair Donna Hector,
Here.
Committee Member Karen Duncan,
Present.
Committee Member Steve Kozlowski, Committee Member Randy Renter,
Here.
Alternate Member David Love, and Council Liaison Deborah. Thank you.
He has a sinus infection.
Oh,
Yeah, he's miserable today.
Sorry to hear that.
Yes. So next we do, where's this paper you just gave me?
Next, you would, where's your agenda?
That's what I'm asking.
Oh, here.
Okay. Consent agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
No, well, the consent agenda. Okay, so, we need to approve the minutes from the meeting of October 6th. Did everybody get a chance to read those? I read them, I think they're fine. Okay, I'll take your word. Okay. Will you make a motion? Oh, I make a motion, we approve those minutes. I second that. Any discussion? 1 minute? Okay. We have to vote on that?
Yes.
Oh, we do,
Yes. All right, Vice Chair Donna Hector,
Yes.
Committee Member Karen Duncan.
Yes.
Committee Member Randy Renter.
Aye.
And Chairperson Emma Davenport.
Aye. Okay, next we have it listed as report from chairperson on activities from last meeting. I intend for this to just kind of be, a wrap up of reporting on any results of what we did in the last meeting. So everybody should feel free to, participate, to have some kind of announcement or something, or follow up. Last month we had a citizen come in and speak to us about the issue of STRs and short-term rentals in Wood Creek. I spoke with him personally afterwards and had the chairperson of planning and zoning spoke to him for a good half hour, and then I spoke to him again to be sure he was satisfied with the response, and he was. He's not entirely happy with the city, but he was satisfied that we responded to his comments. I had said last month that I would attend the next PNC meeting and that I would ask their liaison, Joe Cortava, what I knew he would attend. I'm not going to attend after all. Joe is planning to be there. The reason I'm not going to attend is because it turns out PNC has not met since we last met. They ordinarily meet on the Wednesday after our Tuesday meeting, but last month we met on Thursday because of Arbor Day. So they're meeting tomorrow. So they haven't done anything yet, but there would be nothing for me to tell you about.
Their agenda is posted though, so if you want to review it.
Oh, absolutely. And they are going to address that issue, so we're sure. The other thing is, several of us have asked questions, and either our liaison Deborah or city staff to help us out. Here's one that I asked: can you instruct us on how the ordinance review committee can make certain that ordinance references are correct, and how we confirm that there are no contradictions among the ordinances? I was looking at the tree ordinance just for our purpose, and the reference on it is incorrect. It just is playing the wrong reference. And, Karen found one of those too. So as we're looking at our topics, we do need to check those ordinance references and be sure they're correct. So when Maureen and I were setting the final agenda, Donna and I met and said it, but we did some things wrong and Maureen had to help us out. We're learning. Yeah, we're learning. She suggested that we use the word workshop for our next portion where we talk about these topics. It somehow freed us up. I didn't exactly understand why, but when she said it, it sounded like a good idea. So could you tell us what's the difference between a workshop and a discussion or a meeting?
A workshop is it's subject based, you're gonna talk, say about this, but you're not really bound by following an agenda. And it's a much
Just a little
freer,
more freedom.
yeah, it's a much freer discussion of ideas and,
You don't have to have motions. You
Yeah.
don't have, there's not, so technically in a meeting, each person's only limited to speak on a topic 2 times.
Oh,
Very rarely do we abide by that because most of the time our discussion's helpful, relevant. Sometimes you'll see Mayor Roscoe shut down something and say, I think everybody said this enough times now, we're just repeating ourselves. So the workshop means that you are not as bound by Robert's rules
okay, great.
and the
Okay.
formalities of that.
All right.
Um,
I love that. Let's do workshop.
Isn't it true though, that in a discussion, you can, everyone's speak without motions and formalities like that?
Yeah, so for example, like, just to go back to like the formality, a workshop, your chairperson can say, now the workshop begins. Versus any other item on the agenda, you actually need a motion to begin discussing. So if you were looking at, for example, number 5, somebody would have to say, I move that we review and discuss and take appropriate action on the creation of the position of a code enforcer for the city of Wood Creek. And they would need a second. And that's what actually opens up the discussion. Something can fail for lack of motion or second. So, for example, say another body sends you an item and y'all don't want to discuss it, like maybe you've not collectively decided that, but nobody, when the item comes up, nobody's like, yes, let's discuss.
Well, it's prepared.
Then it fails and it just goes off the agenda and it's done.
And then it can be put back on.
Technically, if something fails, it's not supposed to be.
It's not supposed to be from that.
It's kind of like no, not really, because it's sort of the board or panel or whoever saying, we're not interested in that item. If it fails for lack of discussion, then that's a fail. It's just the same as everybody voting nay.
Oh, okay.
But a workshop can just be called. It's kind of like a report. It's like it happens, and then during the workshop, y'all don't have to do anything formal. Everybody can just kind of talk in free flow, and then once the workshop's closed, then you go back into that like meeting motions, meeting
So-
seconds.
If for several months it takes possibly to do these items, then at the very end of the items, then we would go back into a motion to adopt this as the new version?
Here's another way to use it. The answer is yes. At the end of a workshop, you can go back into the original meeting, issue a motion, and adopt it.
But the motion might not be on the agenda. We might not know.
You have to have it on the agenda.
Okay, so we have to know when we're gonna finish.
Or just make sure it gets onto the next meeting, okay, workshop's over. But what y'all can do, especially if you're kind of struggle with the formality of the things and feel like it doesn't really work for the work you're trying to do, you can actually just hold workshops. You can't do anything with them, meaning like, you can't say, this is done, we're gonna send it somewhere else. But you all could hold a workshop every 2 weeks, where you all just meet here, it's still videotaped, there doesn't have to be a formal agenda, it just says what you're workshopping, and then you can meet and discuss, and it's part of you're compliant with the open meetings then.
Okay.
Because the public's been notified, you're being videoed.
Well, actually, Maureen thought of that, and you'll notice on our agenda, we have the workshop, which guides in the document, but then we have discuss and take appropriate action, which allows us to act. And now that we found out about this workshop, that may work because, Steve brought up the matter of consistent formatting, so that each one of these points, so that they're all written in a consistent manner. Pissy little things that an English major like me would, like if you write "and" out one time, then in the next one you don't use the second, just be consistent. So what I was wondering if we could do is, and now that we found out about this workshop, since we probably can, we decide on our wording for every topic, and then at the end, I'll go through and be sure that the periods and the commas and the ands are all consistent. And then we'll vote on the final. So that, okay, that works. That works. The other one was a request from Karen. I'm requesting that upon completion of the important Wood Creek ordinances, Deborah present an overview of how our ordinances work from a legal perspective before we start working on our deep dive. Other members have also expressed, look, I'm not a lawyer. I don't feel that I'm in a position to be revising city ordinances. So is that something that we need to use a meeting for, or do we schedule a separate workshop with you, Deborah, or because I think there are a number of us who feel that we need a little more guidance about, not yet, but when we get to addressing the individual ordinances, we don't want to go to a lot of bother and then have the city's legal counsel go, and have you.
Since we're kind of in the workshop, we can discuss this right now. So I understood that question from two different perspectives. One was, do we have a master schedule of penalties, or just sort of like an understanding of what the hierarchy of like the repercussions for code violations, right? There was that aspect of like, if we're assigning violations, how do we keep this kind of uniform with the understanding that some things have a bigger penalty than others? How do we assign that? To that point, the only master schedule I was able to find is dealing with more like permits. It has nothing really to do with like code violations specifically. So some sort of code violation penalty sheet could be helpful for reference, even for the staff. And seeing that all visually together could be a great educational tool for everyone in the city to sort of learn like, whoa, we're over penalizing here, we have no penalty for this, and sort of getting that that outlined. So to my knowledge, there is nothing like that that currently exists that I was able to find. In regards to being able to write ordinances or concerns over legal counsel, I appreciate that concern. I would just remind you all that you are an advisory body and your opinions, thoughts, feedback is what's being requested. So whatever form that falls in is what you should send, and it is not necessarily your job or your worry about the legal end of things, because that's kind of where the council comes in. That's where we have the city attorney we pay to sit in the meetings and having reviewed stuff comes in. And so that backup is there for you. So you can just make your recommendations as you see fit. Some of them might fail, meaning council pivots off of it and goes a different direction. Some of them might be great. Why that is so important and valid is even if the exact idea you had isn't what becomes law, often, I'm sorry.
Okay, you just said ordinances are law. Yes, no, there. Okay, that's a start. I'm sorry, what did you say? Ordinances are the law. Oh, right. Yes.
So
Okay.
even if what I'm getting at is oftentimes it's the ideas that you bring that will spark the idea of the final draft that is the clean version. And so we want all of those ideas. We don't want them filtered. We don't want them, pinched down out of hesitation or worry, because ultimately Bud is there. He is our last line of legal defense. And it's really up to him. He'll catch things often that we've done and be, well, you can't really regulate it in this way. Like even the ordinance that I was reading from P and Z, there were a couple red flags that, and then if that gets to council, I'm gonna say, hey, bud, what's this, you know? So we don't all have to be experts, that's why we pay for the experts.
So, I was just gonna say, and I gave you the wrong information, there are 25 pages on the sign ordinance,
Yeah.
much of which would never ever be applicable to Wood Creek.
Well, they're all commercial.
Well, and a lot of,
Well,
and suitable for a city the size of Dallas, but not for a community the size of. So what I'm saying is, when we get there, we're gonna cut a lot of that out. And that's what I understand we're supposed to do, is to fix it, so it's more common sense, more localized for our use.
Right.
Other than we'll say we can or can't.
I would advise you though, we are able to enforce a sign ordinance in the ETJ. So it's
Right.
extension in the ETJ, you can do the commercial sign regulation.
Right.
So
So that's interesting.
let me just back up though. So remember the garage sale ordinance that y'all looked at?
Right.
So I took that to council, and I don't know if any of y'all saw, but what I did was I took your recommendation, the things you added were in red, the things you wanted to strike were struck through on the document. During that discussion, the lawyer said, you need to put this one back. And I said, understood. And so in the ordinance that I submitted on your behalf to council, with their recommendations, they accepted y'all, that put back what Bud said needs to be there, and, updated, you know, so that's what you're talking about in action. So if y'all decide to strike a bunch of the sign ordinance, and it gets to council, and council's like, oh no, actually, this is needed, then all that happens is they just put it back. So what goes to them is those edited versions, it doesn't disappear.
But if we're knowledgeable, then we don't give them that extra bother. It takes their time, if we know better. Then
Yes. Yeah, and what, City Secretary McKenzie said was valid in that we have to be ever present of mind with the ETJ, and, only a few of our things can regulate out there, signs being one of them.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if it's not relevant to Wood Creek, it could be in the ETJ. And so having more regulations in place can be beneficial sometimes.
Okay.
You know?
How do you know which of these ordinances affect you?
I would have to be there.
I'm gonna send you guys a document that I made, actually, it's a little bit like legalese right now, but this document outlines what a city like Wood Creek, essentially Wood Creek, can regulate in the ETJ.
Okay.
And it provides links and resources, so you can read about it on your own.
Okay.
It is kind of like a summarized bullet point to make it easier to understand. And then something we're working on is kind of breaking that down into like what Wood Creek actually does.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So the document I'm gonna send you is, what could Wood Creek do? For example, we could decide to create a cemetery in our ETJ. At any point in time, we could just go cemetery. Right, but is Wood Creek gonna do that? I don't know. Right? That's the difference between the two documents. One is like anything we could ever do versus what is Wood Creek actually doing?
But that's helpful for us as we look at ordinances to know that it's just not only Wood Creek property. But it's,
Go back to the original question about understanding some of the legal framework.
Mhm.
So, Randy, I think you're the only one that didn't receive my email because I sent it as a request for agenda. So I did my deep dive into health and sanitation. I've done every line of it. And, I went through all of the penalties. And what I realized is I started to look at animals, it was completely different. So in the there's no warnings, there's just the issue of misdemeanors. So there's all sorts of stuff that I don't understand. I don't understand when a misdemeanor is applicable. I don't understand when court is applicable. I don't understand administrative versus criminal in this setting. I don't understand whether or not before you issue a lien that somebody actually has to have been, it has to be a concurrence that there has been a violation, or if the city just goes and does something they won't pay before they can issue a lien.
Yeah, so
I
let's
don't have the
most, most things in the city's code are misdemeanors. They're non-violent,
Wait,
non.
can I say something? One of the things I wanted to do in this meeting was to get to what we want to do. So if you explain, I think what Karen is saying is we need to find this out, but I don't think we want to find it out right this minute, because
That's true.
we could not do this without your expertise, but the truth is you'll talk for half an hour and then we won't get to what we're trying to get to. I mean, we need it. So I think what she is saying is we need either a meeting or a workshop or whatever it is called where we address those questions.
Okay.
Not a quick, not a quick answer. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just don't want it to go away because I think before we do our deep dive,
Yeah.
we need to have that knowledge.
Okay.
So I apologize.
No, I agree that we want to schedule, I think we need to schedule either a meeting or an additional workshop, something with Deborah, and we will ahead of time have these questions, and you're particularly good at verbalizing, and making your questions pertinent, so write these down, please, if you haven't
Well,
already.
I already got my email, that's
Okay,
kind of
okay. Okay, is that okay with you, Deborah? If we-
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. And that way we won't be looking at the clock and being, oh Lord, we're not gonna have time to get to what we.
So I think I can do.
I mean, the real quick answer is y'all don't necessarily have to do any of that. All you guys can do or need to do is say, I want council to look at this. This doesn't seem great.
I agree,
Here's some
but-
suggestions.
But we don't wanna do this in ignorance, we would like to know what we're, we'd like to know a little background.
So some of that is not set up by any of us, meaning like these are standard processes that govern all cities and it's a standard
But that's
escalation
something we can
procedure.
learn in the workshop.
Okay, so, does anybody else have any, before we move to working on this document, does anybody else have any announcements or concerns they want to bring up? I'm sorry. Okay, so we're gonna move on to, working on the important Wood Creek City ordinances. Steve had planned to, present today, but of course he's not here, so, just keep in mind that our goal is to make a really helpful handout that's available to all residents. We want it to be pertinent, we want it to be concise, clear, short, and referring people reliably to full ordinances so that they can, find out whatever they need to find out. Now, Randy pointed out, and we all need to familiarize ourselves with the city website, this is a really neat thing on the city website, facts, do I need a permit?
It's only construction permits, there's other permits that are not on there.
Okay, well, it's still a very
It's very
handy thing.
helpful, but there are
And-
other permits.
Well, in that case, it could be that, yeah, we need to expand this at some point.
I created that.
It's helpful.
It is helpful, but like your fireworks permit is not on there.
Right, because it's only about the construction.
But the other thing Randy pointed out is if you go and, for instance, on the city website, put in the search important Wood Creek City ordinances, this document is not there, at least not that any of which one,
The important, this one, important.
at least not that we could find. So, we'll want it to be there, but we'll want it to be something where even someone like me could find it. If I can find it, anybody in Wood Creek can find it. You know, there are people who know how to get to something, but some of us don't. So we want to keep it very simple. So Randy, do you want to start off with construction?
We can. Well, I've looked at construction and water quality. Just start off with the reference to the city code. number one.
Randy, would you do me a favor and first of all, just read it the way it is and then we're going to work on revising it. Is that what we're doing?
Okay,
Mhm.
it says any building construction, i.e. fences, decks, expansions, sheds, walkways, roofs, require city approval prior to construction. application may be obtained online. And then the second bullet is construction hours are Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
The reference to in the heading there is 1 to 151 is correct.
Okay.
And, application may be obtained online, that's true.
Let me open up another part.
And, construction hours between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m., that's true, that's. So I don't have anything, I feel like that's a pretty concise way of stating the meaning of the construction.
Yeah. And it is, I agree, and many of these we won't need to change. We just need to discuss.
Yeah, I didn't find anything there that maybe someone else.
And in reading the ordinance, you didn't find anything that was, essential that maybe not already in here?
Well, I'm not an attorney. Sure, that's for sure.
Okay.
But, no.
Well, but this is not legal. This is just a handy, helpful reference and you've directed people to one kind of one. And the attorney will have read it that much.
I didn't have any problem with this as a song.
Okay, so, Donna?
I was wondering, on the fence one that we don't, that is probably referred in here, it gives a permit, validation of 60 days. Considering the difficulty in getting materials, I was thinking that if I was looking at this sheet, would it not be helpful to, after, just add application or permits are good for X amount? And I was going to say, if Steve had been here, to extend that date from 60 days, maybe even 90 or so.
I hear you. We currently have, the majority of our permits are 60 days. There's a 30-day difference between residential structure and a residential accessory. But those are 60 and 90 days, and I've already had people in that position, and they just call me, hey, the work hasn't been done in 60 days, and I give them 2 extensions.
Okay, and that's a simple process, right?
Yeah,
So
they just
the phone call.
town, yeah.
Okay,
Or if I haven't heard from them, I'm like, hey, is your project done?
okay, I see. Oh, that's good to know you called. Okay.
Would it ease your workload if we extended it? So that you didn't have.
Or is there a good reason why you'd rather not extend it?
It's easier for tracking purposes. I know, okay, well, I follow up with the inspections, when a permit's closed, and it's just usually 60 days. And, I write if I have an extension.
Yeah.
The other thing I was wondering was, can we legally restrict hours and not have them work on Sunday?
Has to do with noise, doesn't it?
It has to do with noise. Do you want some of the houses at 21 and 31 going all day on Sunday too?
I'm not saying that I want that going on. I'm just saying, that would be my question, is can we legally?
But that's a legal thing, so
Right.
that's Bud's problem.
Isn't there a noise ordinance, or am I hallucinating?
Yeah,
There is no.
Okay, well, that was just what occurred to me.
It's basically open sun up, sundown, and then only giving residents a break on Sundays.
And our noise ordinance does address Sunday?
Yes.
Okay.
All construction is.
Okay, then that's consistent. Okay. So is everybody fine with leaving construction as it is?
Yeah. I thought it was a good one.
Yeah.
So it was recently updated, a big portion of it, by Councilmember Pulley. There is one portion of it that is actually technically out of state code, which.
But you're talking about the entire code.
You're talking about the whole ordinance.
We're just talking about what's written here.
And do these
Yeah.
conflict with what he did? either of those?
Kind of in that he specified what needs a permit now or not, but what's good about the wording here is that it just makes, it kind of forces everyone to contact the city.
Yes, I thought that was the intention of it, is to have that conversation with the city, you know.
Yeah, now like roofs, you don't technically need a permit unless you're changing the material.
But that's a detail that I wouldn't assume, and I would call the city.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it's,
Okay. So I think it's good because it pushes you to talk to the city,
Right.
and it has a little neighborly information.
Or at least consult the sheet about do I need a permit? And that was pretty easy to find.
Once you mentioned it to me, it was easy to find. Except I was looking for the fire, but since it's not on the site.
I think Maureen created that last year. I think there's a date on the bottom, because I remember when I moved in here after I got
I need to get.
for parking under my trees. I had called up here. I got a letter warning from the previous code enforcement officer saying you're not allowed to park in the trees, which I live in the country, so if there's a tree, I'm not parking on the trees, it's horrible. But, so when I had asked if there's anything else I need to know about, Maureen had been, this is what she emailed me.
You can't
So
park
that-
under a tree if it's on the grass.
It was on the grass.
so you'll make a good point, this form may need to be retitled. Thank you about when you need a permit is only about construction,
Correct.
Right.
so I'll make a note of that.
Need a construction permit. Well, but wouldn't it be nice to expand that? I mean, I love that.
I would like to know all the permits in one place, and then you could section a construction permit.
It could actually,
Other
could be on the back of this sheet. You know, my printer does double-sided, I'm sure you can do double-sided, right?
And I still don't know all the permits, I was just looking for one.
Okay, well, that's for us to address in the future or for someone else to address.
So technically, the fireworks, why there isn't one is because they're actually completely prohibited in the city. We say you need a permit, but only because Camping Judea has a pre-shading special use permit. That allows them to hold fireworks because they existed prior to the city and prior to that rule. But they do have to get it cleared by the fire marshal each year. So that's why there's not why that's not listed, because they're actually technically completely prohibited.
Okay. So like if you looked at the,
I did read the ordinance, and I did notice that it was incongruent with the permit in a number of places. But,
What I saw in the ordinance that you can do fireworks if you have a permit.
yeah,
It has to be a public organization.
yeah,
We're not, but we'll get to that.
we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Oh,
so you want all the applications and, you know, applicable forms that are up here? You want all those on the, do I need a permit, anything that might be,
we would love a list of what, everything you need a permit for. I mean, we don't want to make your life hard, but
no,
that would be wonderful.
trying to get them all in
But
one
they're
place.
not application, I mean, it's truly a permit, which is different. I think you pay, I don't know, I have no idea.
No, some of the permits are not, it specifies some, in some ordinances, cost per permit, you know.
Yeah,
permit.
the tree trimming is a permit, I think.
Yeah, but
Yes,
you don't have to pay anything.
There's a parking thing, to park in front of your house for $10.
Yeah, I had to think
they
about.
don't do that anymore.
Oh,
So-
$10.
What I feel like would be relevant for this is also the organization of, for building or for builders versus like what's relevant for a regular resident. Because right now, when you look at this, it's kind of overwhelming.
That is true.
A bunch of it doesn't actually apply to most of our
For
residents.
residents. And what we're working on is a handout for residents, not for builders, it's for residents.
Let's keep rolling. Basically, I know I'm not gonna be available next month, so.
One thing I would like to remind y'all of, I have discovered that I cannot take effective notes and pay attention to the meeting at the same time. Me either. So, each of us, Randy, your job is easy so far. Each of us needs to make note of what we settle on for the wording for your topic, and then send it to me in an email. And I will keep a running list of those, okay? Now, yours is easy because You left it the same, so you know, but at any rate, I don't remember the wording we did for yours or for yours, so this is just confession time, I have no idea. Okay, Randy, you wanna do water quality protection?
All right, well, that's pretty much the same story. The reference in the heading to 50.37 is correct.
Okay,
And maximum impervious cover allowed is 30%. I checked that, that's right. Impervious covers everything that prevents water from infiltrating into the natural soil, i.e. driveways, decks, paving, blocks, sidewalks, and structures.
okay,
And the second bullet, max impervious cover applies to the city and the EPA.
now, could we say this applies to the ETJ? Who's driving around the ETJ? Who's driving over in Mountain Crest and seeing that these people are, I mean, that's not happening, right?
No, but what does happen is if somebody goes to build an EPJ, they are supposed to submit to their local governing bodies, county, city, their site plans and things. And actually, I just highlighted that portion because I'm not sure that's legal.
Okay,
I don't know that you can, I don't know that impervious coverage does apply to ETJ, so I'm actually gonna look that up. In some ways it can, but I think we might need to work on that wording, so I don't know.
So what stuff is approved, what stuff does apply to the ETJ?
Steep
Is it
slope,
not-
she's making this for us.
Is it determined by whether the ordinance says so specifically, or something external?
it's the state laws only allow a handful of things for type A general law cities to implement in their ETJ. And so you can't, oftentimes you can't govern the size of buildings on the ETJ. So that's why I need to dive into this impervious coverage a little bit more. I don't think you can regulate that, but what you can regulate is water runoff and wastewater stuff. So that might be where this wording is coming from. And so we might want to be a little bit more choosy with our words here, and I'm gonna follow up on that.
Okay, okay, so you'll let us know next month, okay.
So is that true that any ordinance that says in the ordinance that applies to the ETJ is suspect, and may or may not be true?
Generally that's accurate, yes. We are reviewing those kind of statements and, addressing them. For example, we can say things applying to the ETJ, we can enforce them in the ETJ, and then if somebody challenges us and state law doesn't back us, they can go to court. So it's just, all of these things become law because somebody did it, somebody told them not to, and they went to court about it. So, you know, like for example, our tree ordinance, we were wanting to apply into the ETJ. There was a kind of a battle on council back and forth about that. We ended up with a better version of the ordinance with less restrictions in the ETJ. But we could have, the lawyer said, we could have moved forward with what it was. And all it did was force people to come to the city, which was good. That's what we wanted. And then the second step is how we enforce it is what really matters. So it goes back kind of to your question. We can have things in our laws, and if nobody ever takes us to court over them, then there are laws.
But we're gonna receive follow-up from you, and then we'll know what to do with that follow-up.
Okay.
I would just suggest, especially since there's room, is to type out maximum. I think it looks silly, this is English teacher, to have maximum and then max. I mean, they can talk cute, but really, I don't think it looks very good. And there's room, it won't drive it into a third
Well,
one.
and that is where I'm talking about consistent formatting.
Yeah,
You're
that's
saying that-
formatting issue.
I mean, I understand why, once you've said something, then you can use an abbreviation later, but on this one, I'll go through and be sure that we're consistent.
Well, we're using ETJ and we defined it there, that's the first use of it, and then I think that's the kind of abbreviation I feel okay with.
Not supposed to be flipped, by the way. Correct. Write out ETJ, and then you put the abbreviation in.
Yeah, it's backwards, you're right, so we need to fix that too.
One thing I do want to know, right here, when on this sheet where it says 50.37, that's actually impervious cover. It falls under chapter 50, which is water protection, but 50.37 is not water quality protection.
Do we want to change that? I mean, the thing that applies the most, I read that chapter because I was looking for something. The thing I think that applies the most to the citizen, especially someone new moving in, might be the impervious cover section.
Mhm.
So I don't have a problem with it unless you guys do. Because a lot of it is about sewers and blah, blah, blah,
Well,
blah.
and a lot of it's about being correct and knowing.
Right.
looking For what, if you type in impervious
You'll never
cover,
find
so
it.
that may not come up.
Right. 'Cause that, chapter 50 is water quality, but where I was earlier, 50.37 says impervious cover.
So maybe the question is, what this particular point is called, water quality protection, maybe it needs to be called something.
Impervious cover. Needs to be
Yeah, because that's what it is, that's what you're looking to. We're not really talking about the quality of our water.
That's not the residents' issue, really.
Okay, so,
Are you suggesting that it should just
Yeah,
be impervious
yes.
cover?
okay, let's think about that word, just write impervious cover, impervious covers. But is that what a resident would, if I wanted to know, okay, I dig up rocks, I have half an acre, I dig up rocks all the time. The rocks are already there, but my understanding is if I move them and make a walkway, then I'm under impervious cover. Except the rocks are already there, so I don't really think that that's very applicable, but this is my example. Because I've done it.
If you don't use mortar between the
I
rocks.
don't, yeah, the water goes through it, doesn't matter. But my question is, let's say I have this question, I've already done it, but let's say I have this question. Am I gonna think to look under impervious cover? What am I gonna? Okay, I think that's what you, okay. And so does everybody think, Suzanne, do you agree that changing that to impervious
Because
cover?
you're
You're still.
And that's the correct title, that's the number associated.
And let's change that on our sheet, because it matches what's in there. It's still, isn't 50 still water quality?
50, chapter 50 is water quality. But
So this
50
comes
dot-
under water, all right, perfect.
Right,
Oh, I see now.
Yeah.
I couldn't see that even with my glasses, so I'm grateful.
it's hard to switch between.
No, it's me, that things are gonna get better.
So can you scroll, I just want to see if impervious cover is in the set of definitions, because one of the things I discovered was that the definitions were incredibly helpful.
Right there.
So is it defined in impervious, or is it defined up in the definitions?
It's defined under impervious cover.
Okay, then there's not a problem there.
It might also be a,
Where do you want to look?
like look under water quality. This first,
Yeah,
and
there's
now
just
scroll down.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
All right, let me try that again, that jumped too much there.
Then I've got it on my screen, so I can now see what we're doing.
Okay.
Like scroll, yeah. Yeah, it's right there. What, well, okay, so it's applicable ordinance, okay, go down.
I don't know, none of that helps the new person.
So just go,
I'm just going.
yeah, it doesn't look like it, because it would have been defined already if there was a definition section here, but there's.
Okay, so really, there's no problem then.
I do have a question.
It does define it on B.
She was asking if it's defined at the top
Oh,
of
no.
the ordinance.
No.
It's not.
So that's an inconsistency. in the
So
way-
Suzanne, it says 50.37 is impervious cover, okay? But then we go down to, 156.120. And it says there shall be no more than 35% impervious cover on the residential area of the.
That is, 156 is, I
120.
believe, a specific,
I put it on, I got it from impervious cover, I put in impervious cover.
I
So
recognize
my
that
question, my
number.
question is, why do we say 30%? And then here it says.
What's the number, 156?
156.120.
I believe that specifically references whatever this is over here, that street. What's the name?
Maybe
The PDD.
The what?
Yep,
the plan development district, they can follow different
Oh,
rules.
I see. It doesn't say that, but if I look at it. Yeah, planned unit development district, you're right,
Yeah.
it does say that.
here it is.
Okay,
156, it talks planned unit development.
So that's how you get stuff like that to annex into the city to earn their tax base, is you give them allowances that you wouldn't.
They are very happy people even with the allowance.
I know some of them, they're nice, they just,
Oh, they're lovely.
yeah, confused about,
How they ended up here.
Oops, the road, what's the name? of that?
Isn't it
the
Tully?
enclave.
Is that Tully Court?
Yeah,
Isn't it the enclave? Or no?
they, both of these properties have changed their names a few times.
okay, so we've changed that one to impervious cover, and that means you're gonna write it and send it to me, right?
Okay, you want me to do that right away, or?
You know,
Yeah, the Orchard Enclave.
okay, so Karen, do you
So
wanna move
confusing.
on to your?
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Does everybody have my handout that came last month?
I do, yeah.
If you don't, I have one other copy that's mine.
Which one is it?
It says to Emma and Deborah for October meeting, important city ordinance with bullet points. I'll give you this,
I got it.
and you don't need to dig.
Yeah, I've got it. And, but you understand, we're only doing this document.
This is it. Not a, I didn't even
Thank
read
you, Deborah.
everything I.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's start with, the top health and sanitation. And, I had scribbled over my old copy, but I think it says 95.05, but that's only sanitation, and, I think it would help to start at 95.0, just if somebody's looking, because there's a lot of good information prior to 95.05. And the first phrase is, prohibits long-term storage of construction materials and any open storage of junk, inoperable appliances, broken furniture, or trash. And construction materials is dealt with, including this in 151.11. Actually, everything in health and sanitation, except for one thing, is related to construction, is actually dealt with different rules in 151.11. But my feeling is that this is a document for the average resident or even a new resident, and chances are they want their contractor to know the construction rules. So,
Well, but I can also see where I might be a do-it-yourselfer, and
you could, but then if you're looking for construction rules,
Okay.
I don't think you're gonna look under health sanitation. I think you're gonna look under construction, where this already is.
That's a good point.
So, I just don't think it needs to be there. If it does need to be there, I would propose some wording, any junk, inoperable appliances, broken furniture, or trash in public view, regardless of covering, because I think I took them out of someplace else in the ordinance, shall be removed within 24 hours. And the rule, it's slightly differently stated in construction, but it's there and probably more restrictive. So, but I think what would be more helpful to the new residents is what to do about your trash containers, because everyone has one. And I do see people in a long time not taking them out at the right time or bringing them back in at the right time. So there is a rule of stuff in the ordinance that says, I would have it say containers used for weekly garbage pickup may be at curbside 1 day prior and 1 day after the date of scheduled pickup.
Okay.
I think that's actually useful to the homeowner, especially the new resident.
I think so too, I think that.
I would replace to make this hopefully not, get longer.
Is there any restriction on, having your trash containers visible through?
I didn't find anything, like, I didn't find anything, I looked for that, but I did not see it in health and sanitation. So,
Cities can only regulate what the state says we can regulate, and that sounds like an HOA. what's
Yeah, it just,
visible. I'm not even sure the rest of this is legally regulatable, so I'll have to look
what
at
do you
it.
mean the rest of this?
So when you start getting to the concept of like what's in public view, and regulating, cities regulating the aesthetics of a neighborhood is not
I agree with you.
usually under city regulation, that's more of an HOA.
Yeah,
And every time I look at our code, I kind of have little sensors up for that stuff because it used to be an HOA, right? So this is old HOA code that somebody rolled into state code. It's been reviewed in theory, looking for that kind of stuff. But if you have people who want HOA enforcement looking at code, they're not necessarily gonna remove things that align with.
so if you're talking about the Davis vegetation, I can give you an example from Salt Lake City where the most beautiful esplanade that a neighbor, not in my neighborhood, but in another neighborhood, kept for several years, and the city came through and plowed it over because they felt like it was an impact on driver visibility. So, I mean, you know, that is a city that did that.
So in the right, so that's a deep dive comment, right? So in the right of way, visibility for drivers is important, and people do have to keep things trimmed there. But this is talking about,
Where are you at this? With garbage cans? I'm still on garbage cans.
and you brought up dangerous vegetation.
Well, I thought that's where you were going about regulating.
Yeah, but we're just doing this topic, health and sanitation.
So we're on garbage cans. You
Okay.
don't think we can tell
And
people
recycle.
to trash their-
I don't know that you can tell people they need to hide their garbage
Okay.
cans, and I don't know that you can regulate how long they're out on the street.
Okay.
Aside from if they're in the street. I will look that up.
Okay,
If people have their garbage cans on their property, I'm not sure you can say anything about it.
So-
Now, if they're in the street or the right of way, that's different.
Okay, Suzanne.
Okay, two things. Number one, the name of this health and sanitation, is not the name that's on this. This, let me scroll back up. It doesn't show you something else. The name that is being referenced on here is just sanitation.
I know, that's why I'm
Okay.
trying to change it.
So, and then what you're talking about, when you talk about garbage containers, we do have it in here. I think it's letter G. Hold it.
Right, because that's why I want 95.0. I want it to apply to everything in this section.
So it is health
Chapter
and
95,
sanitation.
this section.
Letter D, where it says it's got containers used for exterior stored household garbage for weekly pickup should not remain at curbside for longer than one day before and one day after. But it doesn't say if you have to hide it from people.
No, and I didn't say you should have to hide it. It was a question from Randy.
No, that makes sense that that would be a more relevant use of this space.
So all I'm saying, this is my suggestion, is if you're in black
Okay,
and
make
white.
it so, make it so, I'm all. Okay.
My suggestion is that we not have anything about construction materials because people should look under the construction ordinance for information about construction materials. And that we replace that with something I believe would be more helpful to new residents, which is straight out of the code here that says containers used for weekly garbage pickup. It then doesn't even include the recycling. May be at curbside one day prior and one day after the date of scheduled pickup. Then Randy asked a question and we went down a different street. He asked whether we could actually ask people
Well, no, my question was, do we restrict
visibility. And,
the trash cans in a visible?
and I found nothing about that. I didn't look for it a lot, but I found that, I did think of it and I did not find anything.
And the reason I ask is because if we do regulate that, it seems like that would be a good thing to put in here, but it's not, there is no ordinance regulating that.
I don't think there is. Yeah, okay. But I thought this would be useful to new residents to know what to do with their garbage cans.
So you want to replace what's there with letter D up here?
Yeah, my wording may not be identical to D. I think,
You
Well, we're
said-
not working on the ordinance, we're only working on this
Right.
sheet, so we're not go changing anything up there, she'll do that when we get to this, but right now we're just working on the sheet.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the exact language from D, because I tried to do some editing and make
No,
it.
you're good, it's almost identical.
Okay, so read it, prohibit, but I do have a question about this construction materials.
So she says containers used for weekly garbage pickup may be at curbside 1 day prior and 1 day post pickup.
I like that.
One day after scheduled pickup, the day was scheduled
Prior and one post, that's what she just said.
She
Okay.
said, I didn't
Schedule.
say that.
Scheduled pickup.
Yes, and there's only,
I don't know about y'all, but like, our trash man comes sometimes the day after.
yeah, no, I might not, but well,
Yeah, I think that's why I omitted scheduled.
Could you
Well,
just say
so I,
one day out?
well, then don't put scheduled pickup, say after, because that makes it actual pickup, yeah. So you could just schedule that all, yeah.
To leave that word off, the schedule, because, you know, you can't, like I left today and they still haven't come, they're supposed to come in the morning.
well, and about every 3 weeks you get a text that they're late, or that they had a breakdown, or their tire is
Just
flat.
say after the date of pickup, because you know when they, if you leave out that word scheduled,
Yeah.
you know when they come, because they leave the cans open.
Yeah.
One question I have, Karen, about deleting construction materials. Just suppose I'm a do-it-yourselfer, and I go to Home Depot and I buy a whole bunch of wood, and I set it beside my driveway. Which is not in my backyard behind my privacy, it's by my driveway, and I mean to build whatever it is I'm gonna build. But I don't know, for whatever reason.
All of that is covered in the construction ordinance.
Okay.
Everything, and if.
And you're right, if we make this sanitation, yeah, that's a good.
Well, it's health and sanitation. I don't know what's healthy about it, but it's health and sanitation.
Are you recommending that comment moved up to construction then?
No.
Instead of being omitted entirely, are you
No,
recommending?
I'm not, because, there's a whole bunch of stuff about construction. There's a ton of rules about construction, and the very best thing that can happen is that the person who needs to get a permit will come to the city and they will have a conversation. So their construction materials is dealt with better in the language in the construction ordinance than in the language in the health and sanitation
Okay.
ordinance.
Now, on
Much
this
better
health and
dealt with.
On this health and sanitation, did I not hear you say you're suggesting we just make it sanitation? Or
No, I didn't say that. I like
Suzanne,
the
did you say
name.
that? Okay, Suzanne said that. She said because the ordinance actually doesn't say health and
It
sanitation.
does say health and sanitation, it just,
At the top.
that's the name of the ordinance, health and sanitation, and then inside the ordinance, it just says sanitation.
Okay, so it's gonna be prohibits long-term storage of.
No,
I'm not-
no, that one's gone.
Okay, prohibits any open storage of junk. We're still gonna do that, right?
No.
Take the whole
We're not
thing.
addressing any of that. We're
No,
scratching that.
I'm proposing, I don't think that, I like what Randy did for construction. I am asking that we focus this on things that are the most broad for the homeowner. And that the homeowner is gonna be the person that is, who wants to do construction is not gonna look at sanitation for how to do their construction.
But if I have a neighbor who, you know, I have a friend in Eagle Rock who has this problem, they call her the hoarder. A neighbor who piles stuff in her front yard. And then they can do nothing about it, so I'm not gonna think to look under construction.
This doesn't change the code, I mean, the code's still the code.
The code,
Well, I know, but as a new, I can point to her and say, you're not allowed to leave your junk in the front yard. I have it on here, but I don't have it on here.
so hang on.
95.05 sanitation up here is what we quote for somebody who leaves their trash outside their front door or at their curb all week before trash gets picked up.
No, well, that's not, I don't think that's what Jim was saying. She's saying that she has somebody who piles junk in her.
Yeah, so 95.05 directly references the storage of long-term stuff.
Mhm.
It
But
says
there's-
exactly what this code says.
So what I wanted to keep
I think,
was an accumulation, rocks or debris, or an unnatural and unsightly manner, not related to landscaping or beautification, open storage of accumulated junk can stay, allowing the growth. There's a lot of things that can stay. I just don't think it's the
Okay,
most.
but give us how the wording, what it.
I'm not putting it, okay, there's a difference between what I think should stay in the ordinance.
Yeah.
And what I think should be in the top 10 for the net resident. They're very different.
What I would need for today is for you to tell me what we're writing on the important Wood Creek City ordinance.
So strike out prohibits long-term storage,
Okay,
strike that, and then keep containers. The first thing is the bullet that says containers.
you're talking about trash and recycling, that's what you're talking
I'm
about?
not talking about recycling because it's not in the ordinance. Just
Or
strike
give me wording, because I can't see
It's,
anything that
it's
says.
here, it's all done.
it's on, it's right here.
The only thing we did is strike the word schedule.
Right.
Instruct the words.
Yeah, okay,
Right here.
That's it.
okay,
I'm
okay.
gonna put that. Now, let's work on what you're saying and she's saying. Let's look at number 2, 3, and maybe 2 and 3 and combine them to go.
When I look at health and sanitation, I have 2 bullets.
I'm not putting anything about hoarding or orders or, I'm trying to, and I could be wrong and you guys can outvote me, but I'm trying to do something simple for the vast majority of the residents.
Right.
So the 90%, not the 10%. And, I mean, if you have a problem, if you're a resident and you have a problem with a hoarder next door, you could consult with city and ask them, because now you've got a situation where you probably have an ordinance that they need to enforce. I mean, I just don't think, this is me.
Okay, so let me try to help explain what I'm now grasping what you're saying. This is supposed to be a quick reference guide for people to be like, do I need a permit? What is the rule? That kind of thing.
That's what I.
What you're getting at is the concept of, versus those more fine-tuned ordinances that kind of keep the neighborhood looking nice, or like, I like what you said about the idea that what are the majority of people doing versus like, a big part of this is whether or not it can be seen from the road is how it gets reported. So I could see how maybe that's not as relevant to everyone because we know people, I mean, honestly, we have a pile of rocks right now at our house, pending landscaping projects, right? That have been there for a little while. Somebody could decide that that's not good and report me, but it's not really visible. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I can see what you're saying, that potentially that item.
The limit, when we first got this, all I saw in it was no, no, no.
Right.
And so then I got this from the city council, and it says, is this serving the citizens? Look for a reduction in enforcement needed. And so, I don't want it, to me, we want to be welcoming and helpful and not no, no, no. And there is no, 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 we're, but that's the 10 or 20%, but not the 80 or 90%.
So under health and sanitation.
I mean, I could be wrong.
Your first bullet is gonna be containers for weekly garbage pickup may be at curbside 1 day prior and 1 day after pickup.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, now we're gonna go on to the next bullet, property, and we're gonna strike that first bullet.
Yes.
Entirely.
That's what I'm proposing.
Does anybody object to striking that first bullet about junk and alcohol?
I guess I do object to that. It seems important to
Yeah, I agree with you. I would just assume.
say that we care what your yard looks like.
Well, I come from San Antonio, and in South San Antonio, there are old washers in the front yard, and it's dreadful. So, yeah, I agree with you, Randy, that I was fine with with deleting construction.
It's not
materials,
deleted from the ordinance.
Yeah.
It's just this information sheet.
Right.
I think that's what Karen's getting at again, is what is the purpose of this sheet?
Okay,
This is not an
That's the
ordinance.
goal, right?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of the sheet, to regulate behavior or to be a quick reference guide?
okay, I think that's a good point. So the regulating of behavior is still in the ordinance, Randy.
Yeah,
But the quick point is we're just giving people information they need.
I'm not saying I agree with striking it, but with that comment, I think that's where the disagreement and discussion is. And I think that if you wanted to keep this point there, to go with what Karen's talking about, if you chose to rephrase it, I think a lot of this thing goes back to the concept of the tone, right? What is it saying? What is the goal there? The goal is don't store crap on your property for long periods of time.
Well,
Don't visibly disrupt the view of our neighborhood, right?
Well,
So we could find a way to rephrase that, because you don't have to take it straight from code. Remember, this is a reference guide.
okay.
So if you want to do that, I would take out, you can make a third bullet, but I would take out the long-term storage of construction materials,
Yeah.
because people are gonna quit reading at that point. They read from left to right, and they're not, it has nothing to do with construction. What you're saying is like, our yards should be nice. So if you want to just take part of it and say, open storage of junk, inoperable appliances, broken furniture, or trash is prohibited, then, or even put the construction materials at the end of the sentence.
No, I think we've all agreed that construction materials are better under construction.
Yeah,
I don't
so,
think that's a question anymore.
So you've got over here in, you've got it said better in the ordinance on 95.05A3.
It's also up here.
Yeah, that's what I was reading earlier.
A3 is better than A1.
Oh, yeah.
A3 is much better than A1.
So you could say visible storage of junk, inoperable appliances.
Yeah, because that's actually what you're talking about, and what this is talking about is A1. Basically, they combine the two, but, I mean, again, it's a no, 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 and it assumes that our neighbors don't know what to do.
Well, just drive through Wood Creek North and you'll find out.
They don't know what to
Yeah,
do.
just.
I mean, the other issue you run into this is it's not really defined what long-term means. Long-term
I
years.
believe it is
as long as
defined in the construction ordinance, I believe.
Like 6 months, a year,
I don't think,
3 years.
look in the construction ordinance, I don't have a memory for it, but I referenced everything related to construction in health and sanitation. I went back into construction, and it's all there except for the animal-proof container.
Okay, so what are you proposing to do about property owners must keep dangerous vegetation under 6 inches?
So I had to look at the definition of dangerous vegetation.
When I saw that, I thought, yeah, I thought, what girl poison ivy?
well, I've got a whole bunch of yuccas that have sharp points.
So the way it's defined is not too bad. It primarily is vegetation that impacts driver visibility or is a fire risk or other hazard, and that's okay with me. I
But we
mean,
need to reword it because neither
that's
Randy
in
or
the ordinance. Right now it is what it is. So we would have to fix the ordinance to fix that.
No, we don't. She just said they don't have to use the same wording, that if we can, if what it means is, what I think Maureen told me, or maybe it was Suzanne, when I
Okay.
first said what is dangerous vegetation, she said it has to do with parking on dry vegetation and your car could spark a fire.
That's
But
not
I'm not-
anywhere in the ordinance. Okay, so I am proposing that the language that was here is struck. Property owners must keep dangerous vegetation under 6 inches. I'm proposing that we strike that. And that if the language be grasses or other hazardous vegetation that impacts driver visibility, it should be a comma, is a fire risk or other hazards should be kept under 6 inches. That's what I'm proposing.
Okay.
And I think simply the change of the word must to should is again a more positive approach.
Okay.
Karen, can you repeat grasses or?
Slowly, read it.
Okay, you all have it.
I have it.
Okay, grasses or other hazardous vegetation that impacts driver visibility, and that comes directly off the definition in the ordinance, is a fire risk. Okay, that impacts driver visibility, comma,
Got it.
is a fire risk, and you could put another comma, or other hazard should be kept under 6 inches.
Okay.
And then that is congruent with the ordinance.
So what kind of vegetation exactly is that? All I can imagine that affects driver visibility is trees and bushes.
Big,
Oh,
so that,
Oh, that's a good point. You couldn't trim your bush to 6 inches.
Or other hazardous
no,
vegetation.
remember, it has to impact driver visibility. It has to be a fire risk.
Okay.
So if you're,
Well,
is she, are they allowed to
I had the
have
same
them? Are they allowed to?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
And the answer to your other question is, up here where it says the construction, right here. Time normally required to complete intended construction in the absence of intended construction or period of at least 90 days.
I knew it was there, I just didn't know what it said.
Okay. Okay, does anybody, I like that very much. Does anybody have an issue with that? The only thing I would like to ask about is a neighbor across from me has she has that lot her house is on and she has a blank lot. And she has a gardener who comes every week and so it's all very nice. But wildflowers grow on that blank lot. And she has a parking space, but that's clear. But when the wildflowers die out, she needs to let them go to seed, and they're this tall.
I've got some in the back that are fenced that are
And
still.
hers are in the front, so visible from the road. So I want to be sure that none of what we do makes her cut down her wildflower.
Impacts driver's visibility, a fire risk or other hazard.
So a fire risk would only be if people are parking over those. Okay, and that's not the case.
Debatable.
Right out.
So what we used to do in our
They do
HOA,
drive, they do drive.
when fire season came back in Idaho, which was about September, if people didn't mow their dead wildflowers, because wildflowers were everything, but by about September, they were
And they've
dead.
already gone to seed.
They've already gone to
Okay.
seed. The HOA would mow because of
see.
fire risk.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
So there's all sorts of stuff
Okay, so
about
we don't,
liens.
okay, we don't need to, we're not writing a book, we need to keep this short, concise, okay, I like that.
So,
Okay, I like both of those, so we did not complete your first one, did we agree on if we're gonna totally scratch the
I don't
first one, or if we're gonna
care. It's up to you
say?
guys.
yeah, I'm editing this in real time for y'all at this point. I've got the editable document and so y'all will all have a copy of these suggestions.
Can you read what Karen has?
So for right now, health and sanitation is at 95.00, she made the change to reference the full ordinance instead of the 5.
So do we say 95.00 through something, or do we just say?
That's a good question. I mean, you just start there and you start, yeah.
Because some of them do say through. Some of them.
Well, 95.05 is specifically sanitation restriction. If you go up to chapter 95 here, chapter 95 is named health and sanitation. But everything that you have referenced in these items on this sheet are under sanitation, which is 95.05.
I like the name health and sanitation, so I liked it. I had some comments somewhere.
But that's not the ordinance name. If you're gonna reference the ordinance, it should.
Well, it's the
Either
number,
change it.
the number is what we want to get right here.
Right, we just need to get the number right, so we get the.
So you either need to change the name from health and sanitation to sanitation, or you need to change the reference. I don't really care which.
What do you guys?
Well, within the
She's
ordinance,
right.
You have to care, it's your topic.
I like health and sanitation, and then as I read it, there's really not much about health in it.
Yeah.
So, and there is health mentioned in the
No, I agree, there's not much here about health.
So I think because it's just for this, if we're representing, as you said, for people to look, I'd say put 95.00 because this is a short ordinance and it may have other information in it that the person would find.
Okay,
But
95.
the name of it is just 95,
Right.
not .00.
Oh, okay.
Right.
95, okay.
95.
95, thank you, Randy. And we're still gonna call it health and sanitation here, and is that?
Well, if you
That's what
choose
it's called.
95, it's still health and sanitation.
Okay.
It can't be health and
No.
sanitation if we're calling it 9505.
Okay, let's just leave it alone then. 95, health and sanitation, and we've got 3 points, right?
You all have not decided on leaving. Okay, so what I have is containers used for weekly garbage pickup may be out 1 day prior to and post pickup service.
So you need,
Do you not have her,
I did not, we never voted or agreed, or you can decide, because it's a workshop.
Yeah, sure.
And then I have grasses or other hazardous vegetation that impacts driver visibility is a fire risk or other hazard should be kept under 6 inches. And then we were talking about the language on the first one, potentially changing it to be open storage of junk, inoperable appliances, broken furniture, or trash
Is, I mean,
is discouraged.
unlawful. See, within, and what it says is
You
it's
can say
unlawful.
prohibited, it's prohibited, I wouldn't say unlawful, that's.
Well, that's what the ordinance says,
That's
but we
okay,
can
but
say
we don't have to,
prohibited.
say
I mean, I
prohibited.
can go with that. I just don't want to get people distracted about construction, and there's a whole.
Yeah, no, I think you've made some very good points. If you want it, we Deborah, her thing for garbage says containers used for weekly garbage pickup may be at curbside 1 day prior and 1 day after pickup.
Yeah.
That's what you
So,
got, okay.
well, maybe out 1 day prior to and post pickup service.
Okay, that's.
I didn't say 1 day twice. Did we just say 1 day twice?
No, we're trying to be concise here, so that's excellent. Okay, so.
I would say after.
Okay.
Monday
I want to
after.
be like, we need to be doing this at an 8th grade level.
Okay, okay.
No, I'm serious. That is the average reading level in the United States of America.
It is.
And Donna knows she's a librarian.
Okay, I got it. So I have all of that open storage of junk, inoperable appliances, broken furniture, or trash. Was there anything else y'all wanted to add from trash is prohibited?
No, I think we're happy.
Okay, can that be bird?
Yep. That's
I
prohibited.
really want this to be welcoming and neighborly.
Okay, okay, yeah, no, I agree with
Do
you.
we need, do we need a motion on Randy's end?
I don't think we.
No, because no, yeah, workshop, and then what's gonna happen is, likely y'all will not necessarily take action beyond, let's get those changes in place and see that
I
draft.
would love it if we can take action at the end, and that way we have a chance to make the formatting consistent, so
Yeah.
I would love it.
Well, everyone, yeah, so what I was saying is that your action would be implement the changes you've suggested, which I'm doing, and then on your next agenda, you would have this version showing all the changes for to vote on.
I love it. I'd like us to, talk what we're doing about 4 o'clock. Karen, do you think you have time to do animal control?
It depends on how the conversation goes.
Yeah.
So this one is, yeah,
Do we want to just talk about this at all, code officer thing?
Well, if we finish in 10 minutes, we'll still have a half hour to
Oh,
do
yeah,
that.
we do.
How much time do you think you need? Actually, I'm gonna be honest with you.
No, wait, just wait on.
Well, because of what I told you,
Yes.
and I'll tell everybody. Okay. Do you have time to do animal control?
I have 4:30.
No, I'm saying, can you do it until?
Yeah, I can do whatever, I'm prepared to do.
Okay,
finish
okay.
I can prepare, I would.
We don't have to be crazy about it, but I'd like us to finish this by about 4 because we have 2 other items.
Perfect.
agenda items.
Okay, so on animal control, what's currently written is feeding of deer is strictly prohibited.
And everybody feeds the deer.
I'm not even going there.
Okay.
I'm just telling you what it says. What I'm proposing, because there's also in the ordinance a prohibition of feeding the geese, I put feeding of deer or geese through direct feeding or providing attractants is prohibited. And I don't know if attractants are actually in the ordinance, or that's just something I know from living in bear country.
Or seeing the open buckets in people's yards.
Oh, yeah, that too.
I will look, give me a second.
So I know what attractants are, but other people may not know what attractants are. And we could just cut it down, the feeding of deer or geese is prohibited. And
Is
then,
it friendlier if we give a very short explanation? I mean, we're not just being mean and wanting them to starve. It's-
I would love to see that in the ordinance where there's
Okay.
room to put it.
Okay.
I
Okay, when we
really,
get there, then let's.
I would
address it.
love to
Okay.
put some
Because
explanation.
that is an issue. Some
It's
people
critical.
think
They're
it's like how we used to feed, bread to
To
ducks
ducks,
at the lake. And we didn't know, we thought we were doing a good
And
thing.
I agree with you 100%. I actually wanted to add that to the ordinance.
Okay, let's address that. when
But
we
I
get
don't think
there.
we have room
Okay.
here.
No, this needs to be short, you're right. Okay,
So
go
the
ahead.
choice is feeding of deer or geese is prohibited, or I added direct feeding or providing attractants, but I'm not sure attractants is in there, or I just made that up because it's in my head.
No, it's not in here. I queried the word attractants up here,
Okay,
and the only thing that came up was attracting deer to a trapping area, and then it also says knowingly leaving food attractive to geese. That's the closest it gets.
Okay,
well,
let's keep it simple.
attractants are, things that are attractive are attractants, so it really is there then.
So what are, I mean, like,
Well,
like,
so
like they ate a lot of my plants and I guess
That's
that's an
not
attractant
really-
and I didn't want them to do it. I
So
took up
it's
signs.
like,
Club.
before we got a fence,
Yeah.
the deer would come and knock my bird feeder down and eat all the sunflower
Oh,
seeds.
that's an
So
attractant. I
if,
see.
so if I kept it up there and deliberately and lowered it, that would be an
I
attractant.
see.
Right.
But I'm fenced and now they can't get to my bird feeders, so they're not an
Will
attractant.
the average person know what we mean when we say? that?
No,
I like
Probably
the
not.
simplicity of it is strictly prohibited.
Okay.
period.
I think so.
Yeah,
And then the only thing we're doing is we're adding the geese because there's a separate prohibition in the ordinance. And I do think it's an opportunity for education, and I think we can build some of the education into the ordinance.
Okay, go ahead.
So then the next one is no unreasonable loud dog barking defined as disturbing to a person in the vicinity of the dog. My proposal is from the ordinance, and its owner/handler is responsible for managing nuisance barking through training and enclosing the dog. And that is directly out of the ordinance. It's much more positive. Barking dogs must be enclosed. This is also, I didn't know it's in the ordinance. Barking dogs must be enclosed between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m.
All right. Oh, that's good.
Right, so that's what you want, barking dogs must be enclosed
That's what's in the ordinance.
between 11 PM and what?
5
a.m.
Yeah, but she's asking, do you want that on?
Yeah, I do.
I think that's the only thing that, you didn't ask my opinion, but that's the only thing that's actually enforceable, because that's the noise ordinance. Otherwise,
Right.
it's kind of just a suggestion.
Well, and there's this thing, this form that you have to fill out about how much barking there really is. and
It's a
blah, blah,
log, it's a long-term
It's a log,
log.
yeah, it's blah, 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 blah. So all I'm saying, I mean,
When it says no unreasonable loud dog barking,
no one, that's a personal opinion.
well, and it depends on time. I mean, I have an 85-pound dog and she's not a barker, praise God. She barks twice and then she stops. But I have someone across the street, which doesn't really bother me because I'm not in my front yard much, but their dog barks at the deer almost all day, every day. So, they may be both the same volume. My point is, but one is less than a minute and one is hours.
Well, and the definition makes no sense to me, and I think the legal definition defined as disturbing to a person in the vicinity of the dog. How long are you in the vicinity of the dog? Do you live there with the dog, or did you just walk by the sidewalk? I don't know, I thought asking for training and enclosing are both non-punitive and non-confrontational, and I liked it in the ordinance. I just didn't like this,
Okay. So that's like the direction it's going in, we're being positive.
So the final is barking dogs must be enclosed between 11 PM and 5 AM.
I want the whole thing.
Okay, can you say the rest of it? one more time?
It's got-
It's on that sheet.
It's all out of the ordinance, and if it's not enforceable, we can take it out.
No, it is, I'm staring at it, 90.04.
It's right there.
Okay.
And it's verbatim from the ordinance.
Got it.
Okay,
Okay.
go on then.
The next bullet says dogs shall be kept under direct physical control of owners. And what I'm proposing is different. Dogs shall be contained or restrained from leaving the owner's premises. When off the premises, the dog should be leashed and under direct physical control of the owner/handler.
That's long.
It
You
is,
lost me halfway through.
okay,
The
so
dog must be on a leash.
Yeah,
Basically-
that's what I was thinking. Does that mean dogs should be on a leash? Dogs.
yeah, we could take out the first sentence. What that says is that if your dog is on your property and they can't run off and bite somebody riding their bicycle going down the street, that's basically what it says. So you need
But
to,
find a short way to say that, a shorter way to say that.
well, this is directly,
Okay, dogs must, yeah, but we don't need to repeat what's in the ordinance. Dogs must be under owner's control at all time and on a leash
when
when
off
off
the
property.
premises, that's
Yeah,
fine, that's
something like
perfect.
You could even leave out under the control of the owner, is on a leash.
No, but what Karen was talking about, and I actually had this happen recently. Like I said, I have an 85-pound dog and I was babysitting my son's dog, who is not that big, but also big. My grandson took some trash out. When he came back, there was a stray dog at the door, a glass door. So we've got two big dogs inside and a stray dog outside. My grandson, bless his sweet heart, did not have sense enough to realize that it wasn't a great idea to open the door. The two big dogs ran out, jumped on the stray dog who was trying to get in the house.
Oh,
Well, fortunately, the people across the street were having a garage sale and two men ran over, got hold of all the dogs, no harm was done. But her point is, if I'm out in my front yard and I have my dog loose, I still need to be, it needs to be under my control. Right.
however you control your dog in your yard, it can be a fence. If it's a really expertly trained dog, it can be under voice control.
Well, the
or
rest of us have an electric fence.
or electric fence.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to control your dog on your own
So
property.
your dog has to be,
Yeah.
but you don't have to say on my property, you say your dog must be under your control at all times and off your own property on a leash.
How about this? Dogs must be contained and restrained at all times. Dogs must be leashed when walking and be kept under direct physical control of owners.
What is contained?
No,
To me, contained means putting a kennel, what's contained?
That's what this says. Dogs shall be contained or restrained
from leaving
the owner's premises.
that can be a leash, it can be a fence, it can be voice control.
So from leaving the owner's property, not at all times. Because at one point y'all said, what about from at all times? So
We're
from
trying to shorten all these.
leaving the owner's.
Okay, so
So
let's
don't
just
say
say
any
the
words.
dog shall be under
I think under owner's control
owner's control
at
at
all
all
times.
times, and I think we have a leash requirement.
Okay,
Yes, we do.
so what about this? Dogs must be contained and restrained from leaving the owner's property. Dogs must be leashed when walking and be kept under direct physical control of owners.
It's not
That's
just
about as
owner,
long as
maybe
the first one.
maybe a non-owner that's walking the dog.
Yeah.
Isn't it true we don't care what happens to the dog when he's on the owner's premises?
No.
On his
Not really.
property?
I guess that's true. I guess I wouldn't have been responsible had my dog killed the stray who was at my door. I mean, I would have hated that to happen, but.
But your dogs, once they're out of control, I mean, if they're on your property, I don't know, that's where a lot of insurance liability comes in, dramatic insurance liability. If
Yeah.
somebody walks onto your property and gets attacked by your dog, I don't know.
Well, that's why what you're saying makes sense, because it's saying you have to keep your dog on your property, and if you've left your property, it must be leashed and under control.
Just find the simplest way to say that. I just had a mental blank about what contained means. To me, that
So,
meant put in a kennel.
What if we just remove that? Dogs must be restrained from leaving the owner's property.
And you can say dogs must be controlled when on, I don't know, they just don't need to
If
be.
you just say at all times, it doesn't matter where it is.
Okay, what is the word?
So what if it says dogs must be restrained from leaving the owner's property? Dogs must be leashed when walking and be kept under direct physical control.
Do we need that last under the physical control? Because
Well, a dog can be on a leash and running loose.
Dogs, dogs, all people have no control over their leashed animals, I can tell you.
What about that bloodhound that gets, or hound dog that's out every weekend?
We could just say dogs must be leashed while walking because then it's a simple sentence. Again.
Okay, I'd like to keep it as simple.
Dogs must be leashed, okay.
So I find
Okay, go on, you want to.
Because they must.
must
That is law.
more.
And the leash law applies beyond even
It's a county
the
thing.
city, yes. It's actually, I think, it might even be statewide.
Okay, well, I don't know, I didn't look for that.
Aside from dogs.
Since we're doing this in a workshop, we can get all this down
Yeah.
and then we can finalize and agree on the wording, right?
Like, yeah, I mean, we can do a little more
Fine
research.
tuning.
Yeah, absolutely, this is
Okay,
a draft.
so go on to approving.
Okay, no defecation, what it says is no defecation may be left on any privately owned lots for the golf course, and that didn't make any sense to me, so here is what I'm proposing, and this actually comes out of the HOA that we're in now. Owner handler will sanitarily remove any dog excrement from private property, including the golf course, or this public property, because public property is included in the city ordinance.
Okay,
So that, and
okay.
well, that's what I'm proposing.
Okay.
And then I'm okay with.
Wait, be sure get her stuff with you before.
Now that I realize it's directly from her sheet, it's a
Yes,
lot
it's
easier.
right. Yeah, she. And I'm fine with the farm animals thing if people want it.
Well, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not fine with exotic animals because who knows what that means? I mean, you're saying I can't have I mean, I don't
A
have a pet, but is
leopard
there-
or a
well,
lion.
well, but what's an exotic animal? Is it, I mean, what if my grandkid wants a gecko?
That's not an exotic animal.
What about those giant dragons that are as big as your, my
Well,
car?
that's, okay, let's call that exotic.
Well, I think you will find legally that a lot of things are no longer on the exotic list. Lions, tigers, and bears.
What?
Are no longer on
What?
the list.
Oh my
because we had somebody when I lived out in
You
the
sure it's
country.
not endangered? That's
No.
exotic?
No, exotic is. what's the
Because
definition?
what happened was several years ago, the people who want to raise those exotic deer
Oh,
yeah,
for
yeah.
hunting?
got all these things taken off because this guy from Austin was gonna build this animal tour thing about 6 miles from my house. And he had a lion and he had a great big, some kind of bear. And I called the county agent, I called the agriculture department, and they said, we can't do anything about it anymore because they're not considered exotic animals anymore. Well, then I said, what about the tornado that went through the other day and could have hit those cages? And he said, get a gun.
Well, we had that in Idaho, the first place we lived, there's a they made a TV movie about this guy, and he had all these ligers, and they all got out and came into the town where we had a piece of property. They're like tiger, lion, inbred,
Yeah.
big animals that came into town.
Well, that's the
So-
legal definition of exotic matter. Okay.
Shouldn't, I mean,
What is the point?
I just said, you talk about restriction. To me, exotic animals is very restrictive. I mean,
So what do
I
we
used to have a parrot. Is that not exotic? I don't have one.
It's a typical pet. I don't know. I just took this verbatim out. You guys can have anything you want with it because it doesn't matter to me. I just left it because someone thought it was.
Well, and it's dangerous to start specifying, to say you can't keep lions and tigers and
Yeah.
bears. Well, no, if you specify, then what you don't specify is implied to be allowed, so you're.
So has anybody ever contacted the city to see if they could have a lion?
Well, but what about a python? mean.
That's scary, yeah. Well,
But a lot of people do keep snakes for
Right.
pets.
So remember, guys, y'all are not deep diving in the ordinance, not that you're asking for me to regulate y'all. You're getting lost in
The
what
ordinance.
should and shouldn't be regulated right now. But what you want to address, and what I was trying to say a second ago is, does this line at all make sense on the sheet?
Okay.
Just telling people what kind of pets to have or not have a place on the sheet or not, is what y'all are looking at right now. Or the language, like for example, it's specifying chickens for some reason, which I find hilarious.
no, I know the reason, and you do too.
Okay, well, let's.
I'm just saying, at some point, I hope our whole community can move on from
Chicken land.
a petition about chickens that had a lot of signatures.
Can we
being
just
ignored.
take it off?
I was gonna ask, is there anybody who would object if we just?
No.
Take this last?
I'm good to go, get it off. Okay, so,
Scratch that.
I'm almost done, fire prevention.
No, you have to stop.
Okay, I'm gonna stop.
But
But I won't be here in December.
we're just gonna have to deal with that because we've got two other things on the agenda.
Okay, that's fine.
If you're okay with it, Karen, I could put your suggestions in for them to, because you've done such a good job here.
Oh, can we debate without your?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and you gave information I had no idea about, and so that will help the discussion.
Okay, I'll speak for you. I'll.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, please finish it. You know everything I have to say.
That's
It's
wonderful.
already down. I wouldn't know what I was talking about.
Now, I have to. Okay, so now, we have. So we're through with our workshop, right? And so now we discuss and take appropriate action, but we don't actually need to do that, right?
You just say workshops closed, and if
Yeah.
you're not ready to take action,
No, because the
Okay.
workshop's not finished.
For today, the workshop is closed and we're not ready to take action. We'll do that in the future when we're finished. Okay, so number 5 is, let me sign number 5. We have been asked by council to review, discuss, and take appropriate action on the creation of the position of code enforcer for the city of Wood Creek. We can still talk about this generally. However, I did get an email from Jeff this morning saying that the new city manager is scheduled to begin December 1st.
Excellent.
And he thinks that the city manager should have a say
Absolutely.
about hiring a code
I
enforcement.
was gonna vote against that for that very reason.
So I did notice that in some of the handout we have, they call it a compliance. Donna and I had a real good laugh about code enforcer and decided it was from a B grade old Clint Eastwood movie or something. But I see they have compliance officers, so I'm much happier with that. Are you, yes, yeah.
Chairperson, may I?
Yes.
Just to introduce this item a little bit, so the goal here isn't for us to hire a compliance officer or for y'all to even decide to hire a compliance officer. It is the concept of this group being so in touch with the code, as y'all are going to be over the next couple of years, and also citizens might have some relevant comments about the position, what they should and shouldn't do, that kind of stuff. And there's the job description that council has already come up with, because, yes, a new city manager, that code enforcement falls under their job description, right? They have the power to hire someone else to do it. At this point, what council has said is, we would like the city to consider having an on-call code enforcement or compliance officer service. Okay, so what this is, and we're kind of charged with defining more about that, right? So in the job description, you have the things, these were things that came up as an issue with Mr. Tijerina, not him specifically, but what happened with his employment, meaning that he was hired without a job description in place or some of these requirements outlined. So that's what the city is trying to avoid at this point. And even this information with your input would also just go to the city manager as, this is what our citizens are looking for under this job title. So even if the city manager is the person performing it, they would in theory be bound to these same sort of regulations when performing that job.
Okay. Given that, is there any discussion about this? I assume everybody, in your packet is the, proposal that was sent to us. Page, item 5. Now, I'm not 100% clear, what we need to do at this point, but the proposal seems very reasonable to me. Now, I have to say, didn't it say somewhere $15 an hour? Is it $20 an hour?
Not to exceed $20 an hour.
That seems not much to me.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I do almost all my own yard work, but when I needed help hauling away gravel, I had to pay a guy $25 an hour, haul gravel for me.
so is a qualified compliance officer somebody that there's a certification? Okay.
So right now, the suggestions you've already said is this pay enough? Should we consider paying more? And the title of the position should not be code enforcer. Consider compliance officer.
I thought sounded
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Can I explain the sheet that I passed out to you? It's sitting in rural Kansas, watching the leaves fall off the trees for 2 weeks. My mind kind of went somewhere else. So this is what I came up with. To me, this person should share information first. That's his primary, to me, that would be his primary thing. Purpose to inform citizens of city ordinances and encourage them to observe. People don't know sometimes that they are.
No, the first indication I had of something was when I got a stop work permit in front of my house, and I didn't even know what it was for. You know,
And stake driven into the ground, just like it's
nobody spoke to me ever.
So what I thought was the 3 things there. First, he sent a letter notifying them of code they were violating, personal contact, various whatever, and documented it, and then a registered letter. But one of the things that I thought, looking at ordinances that we have, and I know we're gonna deep dive, is that not, and this is for other ordinances too, that we should not have one person making the choices.
excellent.
I don't care whether it's the city manager.
When you say making the choices what? Choices?
Making the decision to
Oh,
say,
decisions. Okay,
you
okay,
violated.
Okay.
There should be 2 people who know about the code who say, yeah, this is a
That's
violation.
a good point, because if I get on somebody's bad side.
Exactly. Well, and it gives that one person a lot of power.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking power here. So 2 staff members, Suzanne and the city manager, she does the permit stuff. So I didn't know what a permit, I just put permit person.
But Suzanne, let me ask you, would you, let's just go with that. Would you feel obligated? Presumably the city manager would be thought of as your boss. Would you feel obligated to also always agree with the city manager because of that?
In just this instance.
Talking about,
I can answer for it. No.
And I'm gonna say no, because, we do welcome, the difference of opinions here. However, in regards to just this item, it has always been discussed between the city secretary and the city manager. Hey, I got a report from somebody I call or I personally viewed. I'm gonna send a sanitation letter because Joe Blow down the street's got a pile of trash in the yard.
The difference being putting it into policy. Because right now this is how things have always been done. And we need more clear policy so that feelings aren't hurt, or that more importantly, the citizens understand that this has been reviewed, because we had that issue with our previous code enforcer. We had to ask, is anyone reviewing this? And then Brenton was like, well, I do. And I'm like, so you reviewed this specific instance and approved it. He backtracked. I'm not speaking about him,
I hear you, I hear you.
but signatures on paper, formal policy make a big difference.
Yeah.
Hold just one
So
second.
anyway, that, I just want to give, hold on a second. Deborah, the last item on our agenda is report from council liaison. How much time do you
It's
need?
gonna be real quick. I just want to take your
Okay, then let's
suggestions,
finish this.
we can finish and I'll
This
finish.
was, this was just something I typed up as kind of a suggestion or an idea or what it was.
Start conversation.
I just want to clarify, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Whenever I notice something or something's reported to me and I say, I'm gonna write a letter to this person, because we don't always have a phone number. I say, okay, I'm gonna make up a letter. I don't sign that letter. Since I've been here, the city manager, when there was a city manager, would sign the letter, so the city manager knew about it. It's not like I would just, send out a letter and.
See, the letter I got had no signatures.
Yeah, you got one, I got one of those too, before I got here, it was different.
Yeah, so that's the goal, is cleaning up the policy, the
Yeah.
formalities around this. So what are y'all suggestions about how it can be improved, what it should look like? One of the things you're talking about is a menu of people that get called in. Is it just for enforcement when somebody's non-compliant? Or do we want somebody who really knows our city code, who is doing this more customer service type oriented job?
Yeah, I can imagine being on call in this job. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense to me.
That's what the police currently do, is if there's a compliance issue, we can call officers
Right.
to
To come
report.
drive a stake in the ground.
No, we don't do that anymore. Council has stopped that.
With that.
Yeah,
I
that
know,
is
I just thought, I read that and I went, there are vampires here.
no, that is the only time that's still used, because we removed it from policy, is in the,
It's still
in the case,
code.
no, actually,
It
we,
got taken out, it's in health.
so we removed the policy of doing that. It might still be in code, but it's not
But we don't.
Policy.
It's in practice, it's not in practice.
Yeah, so the only times it can still be used are, for example, when we have construction over here and there is no formal address, there's no formal single contact of a
That's okay. I
homeowner.
just laughed.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little, I mean, you're talking about the difference between a deputy or somebody untrained that's delivering a letter versus someone that's actually qualified and has a skill set.
I agree with Sharon. One of the comments I think that we would like to make is that, we would like, if we're gonna do this, we'd like a qualified person, and that means someone who is knowledgeable about our community and what our community standards are.
And yeah, and it starts with this situation, I mean, if they're only delivering letters, then they can't ask the council's question, is this code serving citizens, and is there a way to reduce the enforcement issues? They can't ask these questions, because they're just on call to do nothing, or.
Right, so that's where it kind of, okay, so let's be clear, you have several options here. One, you say, council, we think it's dumb to move forward with this, right?
I
Don't do
think
this.
that's a good idea.
Or this is a good idea. We view this person as a customer service agent to assist staff with the ins and outs of code processing, letters, blah, blah, blah. Something more like what Joe Tiarina was doing. And we want them to be qualified and trained, which he was not until after almost nearly quitting, or like close to when he quit. So, or there's a third option of, this is actually the city manager's job. We don't believe you need additional staff. Use the on-call services for somebody to back city manager up in the event that that's necessary.
So
Kind of that menu.
So for that last option, are you talking about, I don't want to go knock on somebody's door because somebody might shoot me, so let's have a policeman do it? I mean,
Yes, but specifically code enforcement and compliance is its own training, as we've established. They also, one of the things I recommended in the past is that they have de-escalation training, which police officers often do.
Yeah.
And Mr. Tiarina had, but he had it through the military, which was riot training.
Oh.
So a police officer's de-escalation and riot training are over here, compliance, de-escalation and customer service are over here, and there's a spectrum in between.
So when I first saw this, my first thought was that poor city manager that we're hiring, we're getting the cart in front of the horse. I don't know whether that person feels like help is needed. I don't know whether that person's
Right.
experience is in doing this. And I think that person needs to make the call to council and say, no, because of all the roads things going on and blah, blah, blah going on, I can't get it all in one bucket and I do need help.
So this is
I-
a conversation, and that conversation can still happen. You know, what y'all decide is just going back to council as feedback. You can also put that in. We'd like the city manager to have the final say. At this point, all council has decided to do is to create a request for qualifications, which is that it's a publication on the city website looking for people who might be interested in this job. That's not saying we're hiring. That's not saying that there is even a job open here. That's just, is there anybody out there in the wide community who might be interested in a job here? Here's what this job would look like.
I can tell you the white community will take that as there's a job. And why are you doing this when you're hiring a city manager? Because that's what happened the last time it was posted on Nextdoor. People were so frustrated.
What happened last time was that council asked staff to research it, and their research involved posting a job opening, which was actually different than this. This is a request for qualifications, not a request for proposal or a job opening. So it is different. The communication about it being posted, I'm gonna make a note, would have to be, and like I said, y'all have every right to tell council, don't. do this.
Well, I just a bad
It's your vote.
idea.
And we need to move on.
Yeah.
I'm determined we quit.
You are
for
good.
30
And thank you
seconds.
very much.
My own thought, and what we're all saying is that we think that the city manager, we should wait and see what the city manager thinks. I think this potentially, if the city manager feels he needs help with this, potentially is a good idea. I don't think if we're looking for a qualified person, I don't think $20 an hour necessarily is enough. Do you have any comments about this? But make them quick if you do, because.
Good, 30 seconds. And you told me you couldn't do this.
Suzanne to have to stay here past 4:30.
She's taking up five.
I know it, but she's probably got something else.
It's okay, she's here.
I'm okay. She's right. I'm here for you guys. She's right.
I do have some.
All right, Randy, you got the book.
Number 5 on here says that annual de-escalation customer service training must occur. I think that should be like number 1, like the main thing in this. And it should be not only that it has training, but we'll exercise that. And it's not just a training class that he passes. And I think that should be a key part of this job is de-escalation.
I agree with you, and that means hiring someone who has some people skills.
And yes, and then I have a couple questions about a weapon.
No.
Can we,
We need to specify that, no weapon, no firearm is what you need.
that's, yeah, if that's our policy, I think we should address the weapon. Because that's what drives people crazy.
Yeah.
It has to be explicitly stated, so that's a good point.
And then, it's kind of along the lines of your point about $20 an hour. Here, we're asking for a guy to work part-time.
On call.
He has to supply his personal vehicle and insurance and do additional training and be on call for $20 an
Yeah.
hour. I just think
That's not gonna happen.
that's expecting
You
way
get what
too
you pay
much.
for.
I mean, there's no on-call pay. I mean, he's got another job because this is not his job.
So the off-duty officers do provide, I don't know what their hourly rate is, but you can contract with these county off-duty officers for some of these things, whether or not they have all of this checklist.
I may
don't
be
know, but
making it up, it seems to me, don't we pay $50 an hour for?
that's for them and their vehicle
Right.
for traffic patrolling and safety. I don't know what the rates are for this. This is a different kind of service. So
Right.
it's just a thing to research if they could provide that service.
Yeah. We just need to look more into what is the going rate of reasonable.
Can I bring one thing in?
Yes, please. Okay. Well, Randy, may Suzanne?
Oh,
No, she said,
That's all I have.
oh, then she says yes. Okay, go ahead, Suzanne.
Just 30 seconds or less. I know one thing that Mr. Tijerina, did was he would come up here on Saturdays because people knew, that City Hall was closed on
Oh,
weekends and you can get away with all kinds of stuff
Oh,
on the weekends. So he would come up here Saturdays.
Oh, yeah, that's.
And you would?
He would just drive around. And I had told, Councilmember Hines at one point that I was scoping out landscaping ideas and I drove half the city at 15 miles an hour and it took me 2.5 hours. So it would
Okay.
probably be a
Yeah.
4-hour day to do that.
Yeah.
And that would be a way to learn
Uh-huh.
who's doing what,
Yeah.
get comfortable with, hey, that wasn't there
And
last
you're
week.
right, I hadn't thought of that, but if I wanted to do it, even a Sunday afternoon might be even better.
All right, so can I do a summary of your recommendations at this point? And then,
Please.
and if it's okay with you, I'll send them back to council.
Yes, okay, go ahead.
So you have asked if the pay is enough. You've expressed concern that all of our requests, meaning part-time insurance, additional training, their own car, could be a problem there. You've expressed an interest in changing the title of this job to compliance officer. You have shared that for their primary job, you actually want them to focus on sharing information about code first and foremost, following Donna's recommendations here, that you also want at least 2 staff members to be signing off physically on things, that you've made express an interest in them being highly qualified as a first and foremost, they need these trainings, the de-escalation, the compliance officer training specifically. If the job is moved through with posting, you've expressed a desire for better communication about what the plan is versus just all of a sudden a job opening, getting posted and people not being on board with that.
Yeah, I was stunned when I saw it in the paper.
Right.
I was stunned.
Yeah.
Everybody was, because that was not what council had asked them to do.
Yeah.
And so that's where that came from. Potentially, that it is potentially a good idea, you can see the interest in it, but that you would like the council to wait until the city manager is hired before they move forward with any final action. And that you've said that number 5 on the list for the RFP should be number 1. And that if they need to be kind of encouraged to actually use that training. No firearm needs to be explicitly stated.
Right,
And that was all that I got.
Yeah, the 2 points that were sent from August 2nd is this code serving citizens and look for a reduction in enforcement need to be incorporated.
Unless they check that, but there's always been a balance. People are now starting to complain because we don't have enough enforcement.
No, I
So-
know, but
But I hear you.
I don't know that an enforcer would take up policy, is the only comment I have to that.
Yeah.
well, I am true. I guess what I'm saying is, I spent not much time in the code, but enough to see the inconsistencies and the unenforceabilities that some people have pointed out. And so at this point, I have a question, and I know that how much of a setup for failure until, that's what I'm saying, is there are codes that are essentially unenforceable because they're so poorly written, and then there's things that are unenforceable because they're not really legal, and so to make sure that this person is not set up for failure by sending them out for everything, when in fact, there's a subset of code that's driving everybody in the community crazy,
Right.
and that's where they should focus.
Right.
Yeah, so, okay, so on number 3, it says monthly reports on citations and warning letters. The reason why we asked for that was for that specific purpose, so I'm making a note of that, because what I was trying to do, because I asked for that item, we asked for that item way before he ever left. It was not happening. We
So
weren't
I'm
getting
trying,
reports.
when I read this, I thought it meant productivity.
No, this is, the goal of that was so that we could address, how to make, the way I view it is if we have 70 citations a month on the same thing, that code is not working for our citizens.
Right.
Our citizens should be able to use their property how they see fit. We should consider changing code to meet their needs,
Correct.
like we did with trailer parking and things like that. Now you don't need a permit and all that. See, there's no trailers here. They're not here forever. There's not a problem. That was overly enforced micromanagement
Right.
that was difficult and created a lot of code violation problems. So that's that, and I've taken your notes.
See, I took this as productivity as opposed to
No.
using data to prioritize.
Okay.
So I would, if you could rephrase that,
Yeah.
using data from enforcement actions to prioritize, and again, it's like, there's things that everybody is worried about or complains about, and hopefully those are written well enough to focus on those as opposed to things that are actually not legal, or the way they're written are unenforceable.
Yeah.
So everybody look at the clock now. Okay, Laura, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, now the last item on our agenda is report from council liaison. Deborah, I'm sorry, we really meant to leave you quite a bit more time.
No, it's okay. We do need a vote for y'all to be ready to send those recommendations to council.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Okay.
Because I'm not authorized to do so until you say.
Okay,
I move that the recommendations as documented by Deborah are reported back to council.
90 seconds, okay? Thank you.
Okay.
So now I move on?
No, not yet.
Oh, no. I mean, you could put some of the spot.
All right, y'all ready?
Yeah.
Chairperson Emma Davenport,
Aye.
Vice Chair Don Hector,
Aye.
Committee Member Karen Duncan,
Aye.
Committee Member Randy Ringer.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
All right, now moving on, report from council liaison.
I'm just gonna run through the list. Garage sales. Council accepted your recommendations, made many of their own. An ordinance is coming on November 9th. It has additions in it that I found in other cities that I thought could be pertinent to us. So if you get a second, look at November 9th and just see your work in action. Number 6, minimum, and on that one, I looked, she turned it off. So there was that question about how do we make sure code is streamlined everywhere? Well, with garage sales in that ordinance, I did a search into the code and found everywhere where it's touched upon and made them all align. So the ordinance adjusts 3 different sections of the code actually. So it brings them all into alignment. And then there's a note in the item to council to also direct staff to update the permit.
Okay. Susan, you don't need to bring anything back up.
Well, we were gonna show y'all how to do that.
It's really fast.
So minimum lot sizes, that moved to P and Z. P and Z accepted your recommendations. It was supposed to go to council. There's been a little mix up with how to submit items, and we're working with that liaison because it officially kind of left my jurisdiction once P and Z moved it to council. And so I've been trying to support that liaison and help them understand how to submit items. And we're just kind of working on that, but that is now set to go to council for approval as well. Masonry code and the Board of Adjustment code, council voted to direct staff directly to remove them, and they were supposed to be submitted to a codification.
They were, and we get the excuse for the masonry code removals as well as the tree ordinance. Remember, the tree ordinance was sent over. They're having staffing issues, so they're lying.
But it's in process,
It's
they
at the right
received
place.
this,
It's at the right place.
is pending
Yeah, it's at the right place.
with the people that run our code.
Right.
So, on this, so with this, if you'll search, you search garage sales, where's your window here? Where did it go?
Oh, I took it out.
Okay, well,
Whoa. Okay, I'm gonna,
okay, so when you search garage sales, everywhere it pops up and will be over here in this window.
Okay.
So when you use this search feature, everything, and then if you get really far down in the list, it'll just be sales for garage that's referenced. But the first items, you just want to always kind of click through them and kind of read, because sometimes items are touched in multiple places. For example, garage sales is touched under the restrictions for land usage and then under signs in 2 places. So there was 3 spots where garage sales were referenced. So yeah, just using this search feature will help y'all, and then this bar kind of pops up everywhere it is in the
Is
code.
that is it approved, the new ordinance that you wrote, or is it proposed? I mean,
It's not gone to council for acceptance yet, so
so
this is
am I
old.
supposed to look under a proposed area?
No, until it's passed by council,
there,
it's not in here yet.
Oh,
Once council passes it, you can go, what will you go back?
the hammer.
You're moving too fast, yeah. So if you go, once it's proposed by council, before Muni Code has put it in the code, you can find it over here by going to the hammer and you click on the year. So if you click on 2022, unfortunately they're numbered like this, but if you click on, let's say one of them, it'll give you the document.
The proposed document.
This is not proposed, this is passed into law, but what has to happen sometimes is Muni Code has to put it in our law.
Okay.
That's a longer period because they have to then link it all with state code.
Right.
They go in there and they do strike through, so it can be kind of a mess. So for example, the tree ordinance was still pending well over a month after it's been submitted. You can find it over here, but when you look at our tree ordinance, it's the one that was passed in December, so.
Do you want me to pull it up? I've got a different window.
No, I think, are y'all understanding it? We just wanted to show you how to make sure you're touching all the areas of the code with
Does
the
that make sense? So you do garage sales, you do search. This list comes up, you click on one, and then the rest of them get
There's
listed.
your menu of them, everywhere you need to double check it.
And Karen's question, if you're in here and you're thinking, oh, well, I thought something was just passed, go in the little hammer.
You can also see previous versions.
Yeah.
If you say like recent changes, it'll show you strike throughs
Yeah.
where things were removed or added.
I think
Right
we
here.
all need to play with the city website on the
You see where it says view what's changed?
Your Randy's got a question.
Can you search stuff that you saw with the hammer, by clicking on the hammer, can you search that stuff? Or
Uh,
you have to read everything?
Let's see, we know trees is up there.
I think that's only for, inside the code, yeah.
Yeah, just inside the.
Oh, no,
Well, no, it's right here.
yeah, you're good.
Yep, I did do it. So 22313 here, the search is in the hammer.
Okay.
Because it's been sent over there, 22 is a year, and then 313, it's been sent to Municode, but they haven't intermingled it in the website. It's over here, that's, like she said, it's law. It can be enforced, but it's just not searchable in the codes,
Okay.
besides this one place.
And usually there's not such a lag on that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, that's fine. It's in process. It's going the right direction. Is that it, Deborah?
Yeah, you have to move to close and close.
That's why I was asking if that was it. Okay, I say I move to close the meeting.
No, somebody, oh, actually you can, you're not in there. Go for it.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything they need to say? Okay, then I move that, meeting be closed.
Second, at 4:37.
Well done.
Good job. 7 minutes over, people. Now, that's good. You did really good.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah,
change
good.
clothes and get
Now, where is it?
out. Prices for this.
I have a date, y'all.
Don't leave yet, Miss Emma.
My sophomore granddaughter and her boyfriend.
Whoa, that's exciting.
I had offered Mr. Berkeley dinner, and I said, well,